have to go through, again, just why you are the way that you are. And it doesn't mean that like you have to continually live with your past. But the thing is, if you push it down, it's going to repeat itself.
Your path, your way, your calling was to be in this position, right? And so when somebody says, the things they said to you, essentially even, calling you another word, I'd love for you to elaborate on that. It hurt.
In the moment, I just cried. I didn't have anything to say. I mean, I just cried and I couldn't say anything. I had to start a new service 10 minutes later. 10 minutes later, I was standing up doing praise motions, right? Like no one else to this day at that church knows that happened. One thing is just realistically, like everything is connected. We our mental, our emotional, our physical.
What is a quote or directive that you find yourself telling yourself to power through in that moment or in that season that you're going through?
I mean, not to keep it really simple, but that tomorrow's a new day. That when we make mistakes from today, when we're not as efficient as we wanted to, when we didn't spend as much time as our kids as we wanted to, that all you have to do is wake up, remember tomorrow's a new day. Sometimes we didn't try hard enough, and that statement is very true and is a reason to keep going. And sometimes we just need to quit because that's not our purpose and that's not our calling.
Grant, welcome to the show, my dude. Great having you today. I'm really looking forward to jamming with you, man.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for just letting me share. I love what you're doing. So happy to chat here.
Appreciate it, man. I think that goes both ways. I've been watching you from the sidelines. I've met you one or two times, shaking your hand a few times, but I never really had the privilege of actually sitting down to actually talk with you, learn, about you and talk with you, aside from today. But today, man, Grant, on paper, you're this amazing success story. You run a $2 million business. You help homeschool your kids. You've essentially, I hate to see this word bought, but you've essentially bought your freedom. So for those listening and or watching, let me paint this picture because again, I've been following this amazing young man for a while, especially on social media. You're very transparent about, your background and this journey you're on. And I extremely respect that, dude, because in this era that we live in, it's extremely hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to be transparent. Yeah. But I gotta say, it's extremely inspiring because you've built this life of freedom. You've built this life of mobility. I mean, you were just, I don't remember exactly where you were, but you're enjoying your freedom essentially with your family and so forth. But you didn't start there, right? You didn't start as this amazing entrepreneur that I see you as today. So you started as a pastor. Give us some context of how does a guy, that we see today go from being in the pulpit to leveraging credit cards to building a multi-million-dollar business and have the freedom that he enjoys today? Yeah.
So let me go before that too. Since doing ministry 5-6 years ago, I did a deep dive through, a lot of therapy and counseling and just being able to slow my life down to reflect on my past, because it's just that, right? Like our past shapes us to who we are. There's people that will say things like, that's just me. I just have a foul mouth, or I'm just, I don't like my feelings. Oh, us, we just don't talk about things. And actually every single one of those things, you can probably find the point, whether it was from your parents, and you growing up as a kid, or whether it was from being in the military and having someone drill some things in you, or whatever it is, like our past shapes who we are. And
Agreed.
And so my earliest memory of like I told this to someone else before of video of me, like I can see live action Grant. Like I have little snapshots of like kindergarten, first grade stuff, but like of actually things happening. The first thing I remember is there are things in like 4th, 5th grade. And in 4th grade, I was voted the class president, or each class got to vote someone to be on like the government council, right? And so I was
Awesome.
One of the 4 4th graders. In 5th grade, I didn't win. And I remember that feeling. And in that same time in 5th grade I remember I was starting puberty, because I remember I stunk and I had to put on deodorant. And during that, for a guy in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, lots of changes happening.
Yep.
So in 6th grade, is when in my school, like zeros started.
Mm.
And to me was a lot of stress. I was a perfectionist. I want to get good grades, and it's unfortunate that's the system, that even if you know everything that's being taught, if you are boneheaded and forgetful like I was and forget some assignments, you're going to get a B or a C in the class. And so in fifth and sixth grade, I started getting sick a lot from that stress. I started having migraines. I spent even some time in the hospital. I think 2 separate, like 3-day periods. Just they couldn't get my headaches to stop. In seventh grade, I developed a tic disorder, which was where I got stressed, or when I got, even though I just got tired. I remember at basketball practice one day, my coach was asking me like, "Hey, do you have you got a headache right now?" I was like, "No," and the kids behind him were like doing this like fast little blinking thing, and I was like, "Oh, am I doing the thing?" Because I didn't know
Mm.
really what was going on, but
Gotcha.
really, I just my eyes just were twitching, when I got stressed and anxious and all those things. And so I end up in high school. I switched schools, and the reason why like I think that's so relevant to me is because I've always been a people pleaser. I've always wanted people's words of affirmation. I've always wanted people to say, "Good job, Grant." Even your little intro, like there's something inside of it that's like, "Yeah, buddy, like let's bring it, let's hear it," and that comes from bullying and not feeling accepted and feeling going through all that stuff in middle school. Is I just long to hear that. I got it from home,
Mhm.
but you still want your friends, you still want the popular kids to like you, right? Like all of those
Yeah.
emotions. And so for me, the reason why, again, this is just from talking to people I care about and trying to figure out why I am the way I am, like recent things. But
Yeah.
I really think the reason why I have such a high work ethic is because I was always seeking approval.
Mm.
I was always the teacher's pet in a lot of my classes. When I started working at Dairy Queen and Texas Roadhouse, I moved up fast, and the bosses liked me because I worked hard, because I wanted them to say how great I was,
Mm.
because I didn't
Yeah.
have that through school. Or at least, you know how it is. You get like 5 kids pick on you, you think the whole school
Yeah.
hates you, right? That's the
Yeah.
mindset of a middle schooler. And so for me, strangely, I never had a problem with grit, right? I never had a problem with working hard, but I was working hard out of my mild trauma. I don't have big T trauma. I have little T trauma. It's of I have great parents, and they did the best they could, but my hard work came out of that. And so what you're referring to with church is I the church I was attending, their children's pastor left, so I got on staff as a children's pastor at a big church. This church has like 10 plus campuses now. I had less then, and so I was someone that was very underqualified for that job, and still the numbers we did from a number standpoint were good. Like we increased kids in the ministry, had a lot of really bought in volunteers, and part of my job I was doing well, and it was praised, which of course again I'm seeking, right? The problem
Yeah.
was there were the two people that were my employees did not like me, and
Mm.
I led them very poorly. I grew up with I learned through work a like hierarchy status, right? Like the
Yeah.
GM is in charge of the assistant manager, is in charge of the shift manager, is in charge of the hourly workers. That's all I knew. That's how Texas Roadhouse was run, and I knew how to do that well. And I'd never heard of servant leadership before, and I
Mm.
was not a servant leader.
I can
And
relate.
yeah, and they were used to the person before me was a great servant leader. He got a promotion somewhere else. Here comes Grant trying to tell people what to do, and for so here's those old wounds happening, right? Like
Mhm.
I the last thing I'll share, and I'd love for you to chime in, is that I in between services I was in the preschool chapel where kids are singing and dancing, praising,
Yeah.
and I was cussed out by one of my employees, and they said a lot of hurtful things to me that were all true about myself.
Mm.
And in that moment, what I still say to ministry afterwards, I changed churches and had a good healing time for that. But that moment was the start of Grant wanting to just work hard and do well and do a good job and perform, but also Grant also wanting to have emotional awareness, emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
that people are more important than production, and
Mm.
all these other things. And I'll tell you, at the time, I was pretty pissed off at my employees, and I was like, why did I get put with this out of all the people? It's my first ever
Yeah.
time I'm in charge of someone. And they don't like me, and blaming everyone. But it was me. And man, it's hard to do that deep dive on yourself, but
Agree.
I eventually got there. Oh, I'm closer there.
Hey, real quick before we keep going, if you've been listening to this conversation and something hit a nerve, if something we talked about made you pause, or you felt that little tug in your chest like, man, that one was for me, I want you to lean into that for a second. Don't just brush it off. Because here's the thing, conversations like this, yes, they're great. And I love doing this show. I really do. But if I'm being real with you, a conversation can only take you so far. At some point, you gotta stop nodding along and actually do something with that feeling. So, here's what I want you to do. I want to personally invite you to something we built called the Reforged Challenge. It's a live 5-day experience I created specifically for people like you. High performers who know they're capable of more, but something got knocked sideways and the old playbook just stopped working. Or maybe life smacked you in the face with a 2x4 that you just didn't see coming. Maybe the fire just dimmed and you can't figure out how to reignite it. 5 days, 5 real identity shifts, live coaching, real community, and the kind of honest conversations that actually move the needle. Not just another thing you consume and forget by Friday. Listen, you're not broken. You're just in between versions. And I'd love for you to come see what we've built. Head on over to reforgedchallenge.com. Again, reforgedchallenge.com. Check it out. See if it speaks to you. And if it does, I'll see you inside. All right, let's get back to it.
It's a journey, man, right? It's not a destination. Yeah, I'm right there with you. And it's ironic because the more conversations I have with individuals, it just really, reaffirms the belief of the programming we receive early on, right? Listening to your story, and by the way, thank you for sharing on it. Thank you for painting this
Yeah,
picture
sure.
of Grant, from from the early days, all the way up to who we see today, man, because that really even more paints this picture of the journey you had to go through, right? You heard, in a, if I'm saying this correctly, or if I'm not saying this correctly, correct me, please. But you sounded irritated. You thought this was your path, right? You thought that this was your path, your way, your calling was to be in this position, right? And so when somebody says, the things they said to you, essentially even calling you another word, I'd love for you to elaborate on that. It hurt, right? In that stage, I call disorientation, right? Because it really shakes, your very core of what you thought you were for the longest period of your life, and now all of a sudden you're shaken, right? Your image, this whole facade that you have about yourself. So take us to that moment just real quickly. You were talking about how you're being talked to in a not really a good manner, unchristian like.
Could have been a better
We'll leave
way
it at
to say those same words, but yeah, better
right.
place too.
Talk to us for a quick moment. When they were talking to you about this, what was running through your mind, right? I mean, what was some of the things you know, keep this PG rated as possible, right? But what did they say to you? I mean, and how did that make you feel? Did it make you feel hurt? Did make you feel angry, frustrated, sad? Like, how did that make you feel, man?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing I remember them saying was that I'm the most prideful and arrogant person they've ever met in their life. I don't know if it was then or later I was called narcissistic, but that was brought up throughout my time. And at that time, so I'm in my early 20s, or maybe mid 20s, and I don't even freaking know what narcissistic is. So I look it up and I'm like, oh, that's not good. And it's a little true, but that's not good to be called that. And I knew it wasn't good, but and so I mean, in the moment, I just cried. I didn't have anything to say. I mean, I just cried and I couldn't say anything. And I had to start a new service 10 minutes later. 10 minutes later, I was standing up doing praise motions, right? Like no one else to this day at that church knows that happened, unless someone else shared. And and so I think that what thankfully there were 5 men, at that church that were way wiser than me, and that I could talk to, and of course cry to. And I'm someone that now, like, I don't have, I guess I'm a little more in touch with my emotions and myself in a positive way. But back and even before that moment and after that moment, like, I've always been a rock and been fine. But back then, man, I couldn't hold anything together, because I think I got opened up, and there's some deep inside things that I pushed down for a lot of years that finally came to the surface, and it was like, hey, I was found out, right? Like, and so there were a lot of hard truths that I believe that, I could have, there's really successful, unhealthy people, really successful, emotionally unhealthy people all through. I mean, you can talk about any industry. There's people at the top of that, maybe even the people at the most top that have stories of just people that they've just run through in their lives and treated horribly, and have dad issues and never addressed those. So it's not even that you're gonna hit a ceiling from your work life if you deal with your issues, but you're gonna be a nervous wreck. You're gonna be trying to hide it. You're gonna have, in some places, be able to be transparent and honest and happy, and behind closed doors you're gonna be miserable. And to me, like, that, it just didn't make sense that I was at home at that time. I had one kid. He was like 6 months old, and so I was, learned to be a dad too, all kinds of emotions with that. Been married for less than 2 years, trying to be a husband too. I had all these different things going on at once, and it's like, oh, and I suck. Okay, this is not good at all.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that really what I learned then was the benefits of allowing someone to speak into your life. And I had those men, and my wife also, because I would ask her, like, hey, they said this about me. What do you think? And you can see her face, like, a little bit's in there. And so, but having those people in your life that you can go to them and honestly say, hey, someone said this about me, what do you think? And they were able to reframe it in such a way that made it like a challenge for me, like, hey, look, let's take this part I think is true. Here's how you work through that. Here's how, let's look at it this way. And by the time, I left ministry altogether, I was a completely different person. And there are people that never leave, whether it's ministry or a different job, that have those same moments, and they double down and they just go victim blaming and blame everything on the other person. Were they at fault? Absolutely. But there were so many things that I could have and should have done differently. And I just look at that as a learning experience now. Thankfully now, my wife and I bring up, there's a couple words we could say that brings us back to those times that sometimes we revisit, and just to talk about. But it's not, obviously it's not triggering to me anymore. It's just something that happened to lead me to where I am. And man, that's 10 years ago now. So it's taken a lot to, or I guess not, it's 7-8 years ago. And it's taken a lot to get to where I am, including counseling and among other things.
That's awesome, man. It sounds like you've been on an incredible journey, and incredible for whatever reason. It just does not sound like the appropriate word I want to use here, but an inspiring journey to really do some deep work within, to look at yourself truthfully, to say, okay, is this true? Are they trying to hurt me, or does this actually just hurt? Right? Because there is a difference, right? When somebody tells us something, there is a difference between hurting us and actually, what they're telling us may hurt. And I'm of the belief that everybody needs therapy, and it's not a den against them, right? We all need people in our lives, and I so love the fact that you've got a handful of men that you can count on, that you can go to. That's so critical for our growth, for our evolution, if you will, because it really gives us a foundation of men or just people in our lives. It doesn't have to be just men. So, ladies out there, it doesn't have to be men, obviously, but it really gives us this incredible foundation for growth, to have some confidence, to have trust that what they tell us isn't to out of place of hate, isn't from a place of, hey, I want to see you torn down. No, I want to, I love you, and I want to see you do better. I see the potential in you, right? Like the five men, they saw potential in this Grant, this young Grant that's like hungry and desperate for growth, but doesn't know how, right? And they spoke truth into you. It may have hurt, but they didn't hurt you, right? And it was, so you had to take those considerations. You had to take those. You had to be mature enough to receive that in such a way that, because you could have easily just said, "Well, screw you, peace, I'm out," right?
Yeah.
And lived a very different life.
Yeah, I stayed at that church for another year and a half, the freaking hardest year and a half of my life.
I can imagine.
But now it's all growth now, and again, we can kind of laugh about it now. Some stuff is a little touchy, but for
Yeah.
most part.
That's awesome. I hope everybody that's watching, listening, is taking some nuggets from this, because for us dudes especially, I get it. And I spoke about this numerous times in public events and so forth. We by default are programmed to not speak about our emotions, right? To be this brick wall, to be this macho dude, or whatever you want to call it. Right. But we don't speak about our emotions. We don't speak at all. We don't talk about how we feel or any of this. We just grind. We just do. Right. So it's really important, for us to have people in our lives that can speak life into us, that we can speak life into as well. Right. It's got a reciprocating relationship there. So thanks again for sharing that, especially, in a therapy. And there is no, you know, play in the sense of my trauma is worse than yours or yours is worse than mine. Trauma is trauma, right?
Yeah, to each
Um,
person, it feels the same in that
exactly.
moment. But
Yeah.
yeah, but I still I think that is true. But man, some takes even more to go through, and is a lifelong stain. I guess we all have it deep down in there, but yeah, I also don't want to underplay someone else that went through more and is like, man, I can't get through it like you did, Grant. And it's like, well, might take a little more time
Yeah.
for something else.
Yeah, I agree. I've had to do, and I'm still on that journey to do a lot of deep work. Again, speaking for us dudes, because I can relate a lot more as a dude than as a lady. So, ladies, sorry, but there is some degree of truth in there too. But we as dudes, we get so used to suppressing things, bottling things up, suppressing them, that we forget of all this stuff that we suppressed over years, over decades, of things, and then we finally start to talk through them. You're like, holy crap! What I experienced 20 years ago is affecting me right now. What I experienced 25 years ago, what I experienced last week, is affecting me right now. Like, we just get so used to suppressing that we just become numb to it. You know,
Yeah.
love to know your thoughts on that, especially after what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go through again just why you are the way that you are, and it doesn't mean that like you have to continually live with your past. But the thing is, if you push it down, it's going to repeat itself. You're gonna repeat yourself in a different way. I would have I have the first person I hired after that was my virtual assistant. And you better believe that I took much better care of them then than I did my first go around with an employee. And when I'm having there's a part-time prepper that I have here for my Amazon business that's coming on full time here in a couple
Yeah,
months. And
nice.
even and there's so many little conversations we've had that I know that I mean I'm just grateful that I'm not that boss that I was before. And the only way, maybe we could have some little microaggressions to get better little by little. But if you
Yeah,
want to be the person that, if you see someone that is, leads in such a certain way, and talks about how they lead, you're like, man, I want to be that person. And then you have to deal with your stuff.
yeah,
That's really the only way. And it's not that we have to constantly bring it up. Like I'm reflecting on this now, but you can still just be present. Like I'm still present in the moment of where I am throughout the day. I think that's really important, of just be where your feet are, be where your eyes are.
Listen.
And so this isn't about just continually trudging up bad stuff, but it's that once you do, you can actually be where you are and be more present, because that stuff isn't bogging you down anymore.
Agree, man. I agree. Something I'm reminded of as I was listening to you talk, especially as you were talking about being revealed. I'll share this real quick before we talk about your build, your rebuild. You know, where you're leaving us, you're shedding the skin from the old Grant to the to this journey that to build the amazing man that you are today. But uh, I'm reminded of a quote from Myron Goldman. Everybody gets their spotlight, right? Everybody gets their spotlight, but the spotlight, either going to reveal you or it's going to expose you, right?
Mhm.
And I think, if I heard correctly, that's essentially what happened to you. You had your spotlight, you got exposed, and that's not a bad thing. Yes, it is, but it's also not, because it led you to growth that you needed to have,
Yeah.
right? And so I just want to honor you for that, because a lot of times, like I said earlier, too many people would just take that, receive that, and be like, pound sand, peace, I'm out, and carry that grudge, carry that victim mentality for who knows how long, right? Which would adversely affect your marriage, your kids, your just in your life in general. So let's talk about this rebuild, this phoenix that arose from the ashes, because that's essentially what's occurring here, right? When that door closed, when that event occurred, you didn't just lose your identity in that aspect, but you also lost a paycheck, you lost your identity as well, right? You didn't exactly just wallow in your in this and so forth. You decided to do something, right? So before we talk about that, what was the scariest part about that next morning? You received the news. What was the scariest part of that?
The scariest part of the day after I was cussed out.
Yeah.
I think that it's that I wasn't who I thought I was.
Mm.
And I think until coming on staff, I kind of thought everything had built into that moment, and I had arrived in a way, right?
Yeah.
As any 25-year-old life coach would think themselves, probably. But that, hey, man, like I've done all of this good, and now I can just share my good with others the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so that became very clear that that was not true, that I was going to have some time of growing. I actually ended up getting
Mm.
demoted, and one of my employees that did not like me so much was my boss. And I still stayed on for a period of time, because I didn't want that to be the reason that I left. And so it was still it was very hard. And yeah, and I was just ashamed of myself. And I thought, again, this is going back from my childhood. I care what people think, and there's obviously a lot of people that don't like Grant. And I probably went
Mm.
back to some of that childhood trauma state of, yeah, just not being liked, and not knowing or not wanting to operate, with that. And so I think it took a lot of it made me look inward, and it made me probably begin the rebuild to have confidence in myself, and
Mm.
knowing that that doesn't have to come from someone else. Just because someone else doesn't think that I'm good at something that I do, that I can still believe it. I
Agree.
absolutely did not have that before. I think that my opinion of myself was primarily built on other people. And we know those people that they'll only be looking for the positive things people say about them, and they'll gravitate to that. They'll be like, all this negative, but they said that one thing, like, oh, that's right, I'm doing a good job. And
Yeah.
that's incredibly unhealthy. And that's
Agree.
not I don't think that's the right way to do it. You need to listen to both.
Yeah.
And so,
Well,
yeah, that was the start of my, I guess, the building of my confidence. And I think in the meantime, right, in that middle ground, I still was like, I'm just going to work my absolute tail off. and still do a good job, which I still did. I actually the pastor of that church I still talk to today. He's actually an Amazon seller, so we've met just occasionally about things, and I
Yeah,
think we both. I mean, I apologized in a general sense
yeah,
with some of that. We just haven't talked a ton. But it was
sure.
basically that, man, I was just immature and I didn't know what I was doing. And thank you for believing in me, even though I did some crappy stuff while I worked for you. And yeah, that was the beginning of my confidence rebuild. And I, I had some healing time at a different church before COVID hit, and then I eventually left that church too. Around that same time, right after that, so we're talking 2021 was when I started my Amazon business,
Yeah,
and I had so much time over that year to read books and to really figure out who I was and who I wanted to be. My kids were growing up too. When I started my Amazon business, my kids were 4, 2, and 7 months pregnant, about to be born. And I was also asking questions about who I wanted to be as a dad. And of
yeah,
course, during all that time, because of my stress at some of those other jobs, like I was in marriage counseling with my wife and trying to figure out how to be a better husband and balance it all. And I think that it was just there's a period of time that all of us we just have to be in a growing phase. There's going to be time that we actually don't have it figured out and we don't know who we want to be and we aren't a good person, but we're working on ourselves and we're doing that. And I think I probably had a facade and of thinking I was better than I was. But I knew without a shadow of a doubt, hey, I'm growing. Hey, I'm working on this, and this is not the end.
Love it, man. Thanks for sharing that. You pretty much started to reveal, what I want to dive into next is this rebuild, right? This rebuild and rebirth of Grant Douglas, Grant 2.0, that we are seeing today. Because that when you started this, right? Let's kind of get into the specifics a little bit, because you're coming from a job, right? And this is right around COVID was hitting the fan, and a lot of people were getting money and were spending it, right? They were getting however much money, 5, 10, whatever $1,000, and they were going to Walmart buying TVs and this, that, and the other. But you had a different strategy, which you already kind of leaked out. That's all right. I won't penalize you for this, but I'm kidding. But you already kind of leaked this out. So tell us what you did with this money that you were given, plus you probably leveraged some other means that I kind of divulged earlier. So walk us through your what you did, how you did it. Like, just give the audience here some perspective of what you did to build this Grant 2.0 business wise.
Yeah. So ignorance was bliss. I had about 10K in COVID money. And so we got, I think 4K one year, 6K another year. So we had this extra money kind of just sitting there. And
yeah,
so, I mean, because I mean, my salary, in ministry was really low. We didn't have any extra money except for that, which we were really grateful for. And basically we did 0% interest credit cards. And I just racked those up. I scaled as fast as I could because for various reasons I needed to get out of ministry, and
Sure.
I also wanted to be home with my kids. That was probably one of the first clear things for me. Is I had spent the past 5 years pouring into a lot of other children and working a lot of hours. And I did not want to be the person that poured into other people's kids, but not my own. And it became very clear to me during COVID, when you're working from home a lot of the time, that, man, I need to this is what it's all about. I need to be with them right now. And there's stages for life, right? I'll have a different time when they're older, that they're more they're individualized person and doing their own things, but right now they need dad. And so that was the first thing. Of I started Amazon business because I wanted to be home. That was the allure. It
Yeah.
wasn't the money. I knew it could make enough. I didn't it could make quite as much as I see it
Yeah.
make for some people, but that was the allure. And so with
Nice.
starting my Amazon business, it was I saw someone else with fast growth, and I figured if they could do it, I could do it too.
Mm,
And
love that.
took a course to speed things up, and then I mean by the time 6 months passed, I could leave my job, and so and actually I we mutually agreed for me to leave in August of 2021. Ended up leaving in September. They asked me to stay on one more month, and and so I had an end date. I had about 3-4 months to ramp up my business. So I maxed credit cards every single month, and just scaled up. And by that time next year, I was doing 100,000 a month in sales. Doubling my income from what I had in ministry.
Nice.
And then it was just really clear, by the time when it was time to leave my job, it was very clear, like, man, I'm not going back to that. This is what I'm doing now. Something involving self-employment is what I hope to do for the rest of my life, unless I really find a really sweet gig, or in retirement. I could definitely see that, right, when you don't need any money anymore, and so you can just do the things you love. Yeah, it was. I don't know if it was. I think that my kids honestly spurred my desire, because I wanted to be involved and I wanted to be there. There's so many. I know that there are a lot of men and women that work very hard so they can provide for their family, and this just doesn't discount any of that. If the difference between your kids getting food on the table is you working 2 jobs or you working 1 job, then awesome, go work your 2 jobs. I believed those were 2 conflicting things that didn't have to conflict. I believe I could work enough hours, be home enough, and also feed them as well. And that was my motivation for it. And once I got a taste of that, once I was able to do that for a little bit, when I stopped working 40 hours a week at Amazon, and I realized I could still make all this money and work less, it just yeah, it was just life-giving. But it was different.
Wow.
I've always had good jobs. I've always worked hard. I've always been able to make it work financially. But this was different. This was about I think instead of maybe people pleasing with others, I began to care less about what other people thought. Still hurt me, but that wasn't my priority anymore. It was about just my wife and my kids, and being the person that they needed to be. That started to be, I think, where I poured my energy and my heart for those years, and I think
That's awesome.
I think that was healthy for me.
Yeah, I would agree, man. Outside looking in, and I mean, this was clearly the journey you needed to take, right? Both business and personal wise, and clearly, the result is been very fruitful, right? I mean, you live an amazing life, and amazing, from what I could see in social media and so forth. And you're very, transparent and honest, dude. So I know you're not gonna, say other, or show a fake picture of your life, but man, you're an inspiration to a lot of fathers out here, right? To show what you can do if you just do the work inside, and take action. Don't worry about what other people's opinions are of you. Don't seek the validation or approval of others. Just do what's in your heart. Do what you feel is you led to do. And on the note of this, you know, moving forward, I love what you said on your intake here, and I want to dive into this because this really kind of takes us in this next step here. Because you said something bold. You said work is not my ministry, right? Most people, specifically men, try to find their soul in their job, or in what it is that they're doing, career, business, so forth. Why do you insist on separating them, work and ministry?
I don't know when. I think it was maybe in the 1900s or so that we started attaching our livelihood for who we are. It definitely was not always the case, but that began the process of when one person introduced another person. The first question we ask is, "What do you do?"
Yeah.
And
Yes.
for some reason, that's what society looks at as maybe most important. And
Mm.
I think that it, for me personally, it's a lie that if you do what you love, you're going to never work another day in your life. And I think part of that is because, when I worked with Texas Roadhouse, I got to open up new restaurants. So I traveled even overseas to Dubai to open up one
Oh,
and
nice.
lived what people would say was an awesome life. And I remember, in Dubai with the Burj Khalifa huge tower right next to me, kind of by myself, thinking like, hey, is this it? Like, is this what it's all about? And so I gotten the glimpse of having some awesome jobs and realizing that, hey, I don't think I'm going to get my fulfillment off of work. And I think that, what it really comes down to, right? Like, I think there's stages, right? Like stage one, you just have, this is unfortunately the world we live in. You have to make enough money to survive and take care of your family.
Agree.
That stage one, unfortunately, a lot of people don't get past step one because it's in when economy's up and down, when jobs, when, even now AI is taking jobs, right? Like that might even get harder, to do, and to have extra room for and margin in your life. But step one is just make enough money, work hard and make enough money. You've got to somehow have enough extrinsic or intrinsic motivation to do that. And like I said, for me, that was never a problem. And I think step two is you got to deal with your crap. You have to figure out the trauma parts in your life, the things that you aren't doing well, and have an honest look at yourself. And then after that, which is like, I'm literally just started this journey, but for me, what stage three has been is asking myself, what is it in this world that I do that makes me feel the most alive? What is it
Yes.
that is so, people lots of times talk about, pursuing your passion, but I would say a better word is pursuing your purpose. Uh, I'm
Agree.
I'm
Wholeheartedly.
very glad that
Heartedly.
yeah, I'm very glad I didn't, pursue my passion in sports. I would have had a great time. Like there was even a time that the University of Louisville announcer retired, and I was like, man, maybe this is my time. Maybe I can just travel with all these ball clubs and be on the mic and introduce these players. And man, I would have a fun with that. And that would be an example of me if I went out after my passion, right? But instead, what is my purpose? And I think a lot of people forget that those aren't necessarily the same thing. We can have a bigger impact on the world if we, find out what it is that our purpose is. And I've only just start to crack this open a little bit, but for me, what makes me feel the most alive is being able to have open, honest conversations and to say the things out loud that people aren't willing to say, to be the devil's advocate in the room, that crashes the party and says, hey, look, I know we're all saying this, but what about this? And I'll tell you that, a lot of people don't like me for that. I say, there's, I'm sure, a mix. If you're the person whose party I'm crashing does not like me in that moment. Um,
So I
but
don't invite you to my party, is what you're saying. No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding.
yeah, if you've, and it's just the way that, I mean, I was raised by a mom that always told her mind, and encouraged me to always speak up for myself and share what's on my mind. And there's a lot of negatives that go along with that. Ask my wife. There's a lot of negatives that go along with, of sharing your opinion when maybe you need to be quiet. And
Yeah,
and there's a balance, right? There's sometimes
there
you just
is.
need to be quiet and say thank you. And
Yep.
yeah, trust me. Um, but when there's something that needs to be said, about, like I've consulted Amazon sellers that, have given it a go for 6 months, and their life is miserable and they're not making money. And honestly, I just want to tell them, you just need to stop. Like, this isn't it for you.
Agree.
And sometimes that pursuit of grit is we're on a hamster wheel and we think we're running, but we're not. We're just running in place and wasting energy, and we don't have our grit, attached to our actual, again, purpose. And so we
Agree.
have to have direction with that hard work. And so there's many times that what I will that's really just what I try to do is, if I see that there's something that needs to be talked about, that I think people aren't talking about, whether it's dads being home more with their kids and giving help with their wife, especially like in the homeschool world. I've noticed that there are a lot of moms taking all the homeschool, and there are a lot
Yeah.
of men working all the hours. And I
Yep.
will tell you, after taking over math and history for my kids, it is hard.
Yes, it
And
is.
for any mom to sit for 3-4 hours to go over all these subjects with their kids is and then expect when you get home from work to cook you dinner. Like, no, it doesn't happen in our
Yeah.
house. If I'm doing well enough, it's not happening. And so um
I'm with you,
yeah.
man. I can completely relate that. My wife homeschooled our kids, and unfortunately, at that time, I had too many things going on. Multiple businesses and so forth. I don't think I put enough emphasis or had enough wherewithal to understand the complexities of homeschooling, especially math and in English. I suck at both of those. And for my wife, English is her second language.
Oh
She
yeah,
always
man,
teases me about it.
that was a battle, I bet.
Yes, it was. It was. She always teases me still to this day. I love what you just said right there. And I hope everybody listening, watching really just listens in, because I think, actually, no, I know beyond a shadow of doubt, this is where a lot of entrepreneurs lose themselves. And I've been talking a lot about this here lately. There was this video between Alex Mosey and Tony Robbins that just pretty much shook the internet. And I love the interaction between the two of them because it needed to occur, right? Because you have this, dude that I admire from a business perspective, has achieved some amazing things, but he never felt fulfilled, right? And I know what that feels like. I know what it's like to try to get somebody else's approval and constantly grind and grind and grind, and you lose yourself in a process. You lose the very thing that you thought you were working for, right? And to then switch to where, like, to go through the journey and growth and figure out, like, wait a minute, I'm grinding for somebody else's approval. I'm grinding for validation, whereas I need to be actually grinding for heart fuel, right? Like, what is this heart driven mission, not passion, to your point. And I'm glad you clarified that, because there is a clear delineation between the two. Like, what fires you up? Like, when you put your head down, what fires you up, fulfills you, and switches your perspective from, man, I have to do this, to, I get to do this because one more person gets fed, one more homeless veteran gets sheltered, one more, somebody gets the enjoyment of. I hate to say the word enjoyment, but you know where I'm getting at. Um, that's it, man. That's our purpose, is to serve as many people as we possibly can through our stewardship of our talents, gifts, behaviors, stories, and of course our finances too, and our time. Um, on the note of that, I love how you brought up homeschooling and, and running a business and so forth. So give us the skinny, because I would like to know how you did this. But how do with you helping homeschool, especially on the subject you did, God bless your heart. That is definitely not my strong suit. But while running a multi-million-dollar business, how do you switch modes from killer CEO to dad teaching mode, without carrying that stress from your business over into your personal life?
Well, honestly, you can't not carry it over.
Mm.
If I have a fight with my wife, you better believe that my business is going to struggle. And
Yeah.
if my machine breaks at the office and something comes damaged, you better believe I'm going to come home I'm probably not going to do as much homeschool that day. And so one thing is like is just realistically like everything is connected. We
Mhm.
our mental, our emotional, our physical. I hurt my back about 4 weeks ago, and that I promise you that affected me as a dad just as much as
Mhm.
it did me in my business, even though I have to lift boxes. And it's
Yeah.
because it made things at work a little slower, and so I got to be home a little bit less, and I didn't feel like doing as much with them. And so really it's that, like, I know that we have to, like, again, where you are, be where you are, and do the best that you can. This is why it's so important to get yourself mentally and emotionally and physically healthy. It's something that I know is a privilege because I didn't have a gym membership except for Planet Fitness. No things against Planet Fitness, but I had never in my life had like a gym membership until I actually made a decent amount of money. And so I have a gym membership that also has a basketball court. It's how I like to get cardio. So I play 2 days
Nice.
a week. Um, and I'd also never had bought organic foods and healthier foods. I've
Mm,
always eaten like crap, and or at least not really like crap, but like cheap, whatever's cheaper. Like I mean,
yeah.
tacos all day is
Oh, I'm
completely
with you.
fine. Yeah. And so, like, and then I'd never gotten therapy. I had to get therapy
Yeah.
before I had money, but it was like we're gonna go as little as we can because I can't afford to do this weekly. And then once we had a little bit more money, we could do that. And so it's definitely because of the fact that I have noticed just that
Yeah.
my struggles at work come home, my struggles at home come to work is why you can't ignore any of it and why it is important to address that. And even like that open communication with my wife, like if something didn't go well at work, like I'm going to let her know before I come home, and she knows like that might literally affect me as a dad, me as a husband, and the things I can do
Yeah.
that night. And so, I don't really have an answer to it other than you just have to attend to it all. You can't
Yeah.
push down it all and any of it. And but really, it's just
Makes
one step at
sense.
a time. It's just that tomorrow, try to be better than today. Give yourself
Mm,
grace for today. There's
yeah.
very few things that can't be done the next day. Even if it's an Amazon shipment you had to get out, guess what? You can get it out tomorrow. Probably the only thing my Amazon merchant fulfilled shipments, I'd make sure I get those out because I don't want because they're not as forgiving as the rest of the world.
Yeah. I
Um,
I remember. I remember. You said something that like just for everybody that's watching or listening. I hope you pay attention to what he said. You said something that was very attention grabbing. I want to pull that out for a moment. You said something. You had to get therapy in order to get money. Walk us through that logic. What did you mean by that? Because I love that, but I don't think one, I want to make sure that people heard that and listened to that. But what would you mean? Because I really
so
want you to explain that.
I kind of meant to say that. I misspoke a little bit, but what I meant to say was I had to get therapy even before I had the money to get it. Where
Mm,
it was so important for me because I was so because what the statement you said is true because once I was able to get therapy, guess what? I was a better worker too, right? And so, but yeah, it was really just the fact that I knew that my mental, emotional, spiritual side of me was holding me back on the work side of things. And if I didn't get things better taken care of at home, if I didn't start sleeping better, then it was just it's a domino effect. One thing you struggle with one thing, and the rest will shortly fall after. So that's why. So I didn't say what you said, but what you said is very true because I actually never even thought about that. But yeah, by getting therapy, I was able to have probably more successes in my business because I can show up here and I can work hard, I can work fast, get home to my kids faster.
yeah.
It hasn't always. I mean, I remember days sitting and doing different jobs and just being so unproductive because my mind wouldn't stop in this loop of what that
Hmm.
person said or
Oh yeah.
overthinking things. And so a lot of people, I think, ask me, how can you do so much in a day? Like, how can you? I mean, I ship about 15,000 units a month with one 20-hour a week prepper, and spend and order stuff really fast. And I think at least some of that just comes from the fact that when I work, I'm normally mentally there and all there, because I finally got most of my emotional stuff taken care of.
That's awesome, man. You you said all the right things, and you had to get therapy so you could change your programming. right? Change of programming so you can be in a better position to receive, what was in store for your future, family, money, business. If all of this landed on your lap, before all of this, you weren't going to be ready for it, right? So yeah, you had to get that therapy and to receive and change your programming. And yeah, dude, I'm with you. I've been there. And still, there's this day. There were times when I let myself get into this rumination, right? Of a certain time in my life, when I did something stupid or I said something stupid, or maybe somebody did something stupid or hurtful to me, and it can be a very volatile place to be, and recommend that not anybody to stay there for any extended period of time because it's toxic, man.
Yeah, and without a doubt, I still have moments and days that are rough. I had a falling out
Hmm.
with someone that I care about that didn't go well, and I lost a lot of sleep over it, and just I normally am like listening to something while I'm in the car, and I was just replaying stuff in my head the whole time, and this was earlier this year, and so but the good news is that like I do have some tools at least to talk myself out of it. Some truths I
Nice.
believe about myself that help me get through that. And so at the very least, it's that when life comes up, because it will, like you're there'll be days my kids don't listen to a word I say. I at least have a little more self-control than I did before.
Yeah.
When my wife and I fight, a we have two chairs that we go to sit and talk about our disagreements, and there's just so we've learned how to speak when we're arguing, and even we learned where to speak. Don't do it in front of kids. We like the
Yeah.
kids are not allowed around the blue chairs when we have to go and have a hard
Blue
conversation.
chair. I love that.
um and so yeah, so I think it's just that it's that none of this is that life is perfect, but it's just marginally better. And when that stuff does come up, I have more tools to take care of it and address it.
Awesome, man. Thanks for sharing it, dude. I love that blue chair concept, man. I think everybody needs to find a blue chair in their home. So awesome, man. As we wrap up, I'm going to go through some rapid fire questions here. I say rapid fire, but just more of some questions I routinely ask every guest. Just kind of get some insight on what it means to them, right? Specifically grit, because every season we navigate different things and trenches and so forth. So grit can mean something different in every season of their life. So in this current season, right, that you're this amazing homeschool dad, and you're building in a business that you're aiming to do 3 million this year. I think you said, or what I read correctly. In this season that you're in, what does grit mean to you?
I think that grit for me is just more directional now. And so it's
Mhm.
interesting, like I might be externally processing here, so bear with me if I talk in a circle.
It's all good.
But I think that initially grit is just that you fearless working hard, right? To make something work, to make enough money. Um, and I have lived that way for most of my life.
Mm.
And I think now grit for me, I'm actually looking at the grit of, I talked about how like the goal is to find that thing that makes you feel the most alive, and then slowly center your world around that. And right now, I don't get any money from telling people things that I think are transparent and true, right? So I'm making some friends and making some enemies and not getting paid along the process, right?
Mhm.
And so the question for me is like, hey, how can I navigate some of my Amazon consulting and instead maybe do some of this dad consulting? I amongst other things, I have a master's in social work that I never used, and so that's one of the things I've
Nice.
thought about. Like, man, do I ever want to go back to that?
Yeah.
And I really don't want to do 20 hours of you have to do 20 hours a week of oversight for like 2 to 3 years to even be able to have private practice. And just tell you that this doesn't sound
Gotcha.
fun.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Like, hey, is there a way that I could, whether it's like fully automating my Amazon business so that I
Mhm.
could quite simply just live out these things that I think are important for free, or is there a way to yeah to bring it up? Is it the way to do them both together, or is it just something that I just need to just jump at and go for? And so I would say that grit for me, it's what's really important is that it's directional grit, that it's on the right thing, that I'm not on a hamster wheel running in circles and working hard for nothing. That what I focus my hours and my time on are the things that are the most important to me, and slowly
Right.
removing those things that are less
Ooh,
important, that aren't moving the needle in my heart and in my mind and in my life,
yeah,
and using that grit in a different way. And but just to be transparent, like with
yeah,
the state of my Amazon business now, I have moments in time that I have to work really hard, and I'm always intentional about making the most of my time. So I don't want to
yeah.
make myself sound lazy, but really the most grit it takes is probably staying consistent with homeschool with my kids and being present with my kids and continuing to do things with them like that probably takes the most effort, just of because I got a freaking great coworker here with Amazon that's helping me prep stuff, right?
Yeah,
He's got the work grit, which is allowing me to kind of see where the next place I need to devote my full heart and attention. And
makes
yeah,
sense.
I'm honestly just I'm at that crossroads of I'm really not sure.
Nice. Well, it's interesting you brought up subtraction a few times in the last few minutes because that's exactly real quick. I want to dive into this real quick because a lot of people focus on adding things, right? Adding processes, adding strategies, adding systems, adding, right? But growth also requires subtraction. So, for you to scale to the next level you're aiming at, what is one thing that you're actively subtracting from your life right now, or unlearning or unbelieving? Yeah, I know that's not a proper term, so
Yeah.
forgive me. But what is one thing that you're doing right now to that models that subtraction?
I think this is too true of an answer for me not to give it, but I'll be a little bit vague because I don't want to to call anybody out or anything. But I was asked to be less transparent, let's just say, about some
Mm,
things, and to sugarcoat things, and I basically told them no, and then I removed that from my life.
good for you.
I don't think that this person realized that that was about the most important thing to me in my life, that I can say what I feel like is important to say, and and so yeah, like just right now I am removing the things that don't match the most important things for me. My most important thing for me right now is the physical, emotional, spiritual, mental health of me, my wife, and my three kids. I'd say the next most important thing is that same thing, but with my more extended family and friends, and impacting their
Yeah,
life. And the next thing after that is this whole, how can I impact others in a positive way, and removing anything that is uh, even if it makes me money, removing anything that takes away from that focus is something I'm willing to do. And because I know
awesome.
that as long as I'm making enough money to feed my family, and as long as I have my family in my life, then the rest of it is going to take care of itself. And
Yep.
I'm not trying to do anything drastic and just completely upend anything. But
Yeah.
yeah, those little tiny minuses and those additions, just being very intentional with them. Yeah, I hope that answers
Love
your
it.
question.
No, that's perfect, man. As I prepared you before we hit the record button, I asked you for some things on two questions or two areas to think through as we were talking. So as we wrap up, man, and I hate that we have to wrap up because I feel like we could talk way longer than last hour we've talked, but or more. Where you're in the trenches, man, you're in the thick of it. What is a quote or directive that you find yourself telling yourself to power through in that moment or in that season that you're going through?
I mean, not to keep it really simple, but that tomorrow's a new day.
Mm,
that when we make mistakes from the day, when we're not as efficient as we wanted to, when we didn't spend as much time as our kids as we wanted to, that all you have to do is wake up, remember tomorrow's a new day, and try to be better tomorrow. But that's I'm grateful that my mom taught me about giving yourself grace,
mm,
and so I'm. In the past, I was too forgiving of myself, right? Like making some mistakes and doing some things maybe I shouldn't have done, and being maybe ignorant to that. But still, like I think everyone's too. I think a lot of people are too hard on themselves and too hard on
agree.
being perfect,
Yes.
and
Yep.
seeing too much. And so just when and I think this has come full circle for me as I'm talking to my kids and homeschooling them. We're doing multiplication tables and flashcards and stuff right now, and my oldest was very frustrated that he still has to do them and he can't remember, and he kept making mistakes, right? He almost had it perfect, and then we took a week off, we revisited the flashcard, and he missed so much, and he was so upset with himself, and it was like, man, just do your best each day, and then just
Yeah,
show up again tomorrow. That's it. Like, who cares if you
I
make
agree.
mistakes? So yeah, that's
I
been
think
big for me.
that's awesome, dude. Simplicity is usually always best. I say usually. That's both contradicting, right? But I don't think you could have said it any better. Just show up being the best. Being 1% better tomorrow. And focus on progression. What you just said there, I think a lot of kids get tied up with scores, right? Trying to be trying to score them against themselves or other people, especially in the era of social media we're in. We're always trying to compare ourselves to somebody else's success, somebody else's scoreboard, right? And I think that's causing a lot more harm, way more harm than good. So thanks for sharing it because I think myself included need to be reminded to hear that. Just sometimes we just need to slow down and be like, hey, tomorrow's gonna be another day. This, one more day, right? I love what Ed Milet says. Just don't worry about tomorrow. Just get through today, and tomorrow's a whole new day, right? So, all right. So this last question, my dude, is a two-part question. I prepared you for it in the green room, before we hit the record button. But every guest gets an opportunity to ask my future guest what they will love to ask them, right? And they don't know what the lineup is, so it's completely anonymous. And so far, the question for each of these guests has been perfect. And, so with that, my previous guest, we'll call him the Viking Philosopher. Um, you'll see his episode shortly, but he had this question for you: when adversity hits, the question you should ask is, "Did you piss blood?" Because if you didn't, things aren't that bad. How does that land with you?
I think that there's two completely different scenarios of how that could land. Number one, I see so many times people give up too soon, and I mean, I've had people that pay thousands of dollars for 10 coaching sessions, and they show up to one and then they quit and they disappear, and it's like, look, I know this was hard. It wasn't that hard. Like, you can come back, you can do this again. I know life happens, everybody's scenario is different, but I think most of the times people quit. A lot of the time people quit way too soon. And the other side of it is, I do see people that work too hard pursuing something that isn't for them. And I alluded to this a little bit earlier, talking about with Amazon of, I had a coaching student one time that they started Amazon to have this bonding thing with their daughter, and
Mm,
also have some extra money. Hey, we get some extra time prepping together, and we'll go spend this extra money, this. And even though they built a nice business, was getting full-time income just from Amazon at one point, it her daughter started to resent the Amazon business because of the time that it was taken away from her mom. And so, props to her. We talked about this on a session, and she was debating whether giving it all up, and she did, and she just decided to quit it. And sometimes quitting is the strongest and the best thing to do. And so,
agree.
it's both. Sometimes we didn't try hard enough, and that statement is very true and is a reason to keep going. And sometimes we just need to quit, because that's not our purpose and that's not our calling, and that's that's the universe or God's way of telling you this ain't it.
Yep.
And so I think sometimes we say that's the devil, that's this negative energy, that's this bad thing, and it's like no, that's someone telling you to stop and to quit and to find something new. And so I don't know how to decipher between the two, except that eventually you just know, like, hey, this isn't working out.
Yeah, I think it's something you really have to feel, right? It's something you feel and not something feel here, right? And not here. Something that you feel internally if you pay attention. Oftentimes people just don't pay attention. It's this that wants it more than this, and that's where people get wrong. All right, so part 2, what would you love to ask my next guest?
I would love to ask them if they could do anything for 2 hours a week and not get paid for it, what would you do? And then the follow-up to that is, after they share, just say, well, what's stopping you from doing it?
Love that.
And I think the crazy thing is, like, it depends on what season of life someone's in. And like, there was a period of time, like when I first started my Amazon business, someone would have asked me that, I'd have been like, I ain't got no time for that. Like, it's just not happening.
Reminds me of that meme. I ain't got no time for that.
Yeah.
You remember that? It was viral for a while.
Yeah, but there's many times though that that's just why not? Especially if it's something we're passionate about. I love making passion projects something that becomes a routine, and it's lots of time really good for us. And so, but sometimes we just get too bogged down in our routine of what we're doing that we would never consider that. Hey man, I love poetry. Like, oh, how about you write poetry for 20 minutes every morning and just see what that does to your life? And normally it's a net positive. So
yeah, no, I agree, man. That's a perfect question, especially as I'm looking at my guest lineup. It's like, oh, that's perfect. So, well, awesome, man. So, Grant, man, I really appreciate this time we had together in the last, a little more than an hour now, and not just giving us, the Instagram entrepreneur, right? The amazing lifestyle you get to enjoy, the journey you've been on, and I really respect you for allowing us to go behind the scenes and hear your story, hear about the programming you've had to change, the eternal Grant, if you will, that you had to change in order to become Grant 2.0 that we see today. So my dude, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for sharing all that.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking me to come on.
Yeah, man. So for the person that's listening right now who is loving what you're sharing, wants to say, hey, thank you, and want to support you in your journey, or just cheer you on, man, where can they connect with you?
I literally just typed this into Facebook to make sure I gave the right link, but it's facebook.com/Grant Amazon FBA, and same thing on instagram.com/Grant Amazon FBA, and I'll respond to both those DMs if you send me something.
Cool beans. I'll be dropping those in the show notes. To the listener, as you well know, if you haven't noticed already, if this is the first time, you're probably gonna hear this for the first time, but the gap between average and excellence is action. So don't just listen to what Grant has shared with you. Take one thing he has shared with you. Maybe it's stopping the validation or the approval seeking, and use it. And guys, please expand this impact. Share this episode with someone in your life, even if it's just one person. The ripple effect that it can create can be tremendous. Grant, thank you so much for stepping in your arena, my dude. I appreciate you.
Welcome, man.